Welcome to Not Just a Transaction, the podcast series hosted by experienced real estate authorities Nick Fontaine and Zachary Beach. Each week, the hosts bring you expert guests to help you navigate the many creative options available for buying or selling a home, while cutting out the costly hurdles of a conventional real estate deal.
Hey everybody, this is Zachary Beach with another episode of Not Just a Transaction podcast, your buyers and sellers podcast. I'm going to be going at this today without my brother-in-law, Nick, which you're lucky anyways, because you know I'm the better one anyways. But we are going to have a fantastic, guest here, Darren Garman. He is an author of 5 books, a real estate investor, and has done so much in the real estate world, like managing assets of over 50 million. And he spends a lot of his time out in Iowa as well. And you're going to really enjoy his story because he comes from being a prison guard to being a successful real estate investor. So those of you out there and you're just interested in buying your first property through one of our rent-to-own programs, or you're interested in selling your first house to an investor like me, or maybe an investor like Darren because you have a multifamily, then you're in the right place. Plus, we're going to cover some additional things that you wouldn't normally hear on a real estate podcast, like mental and physical health towards the end as well. So, Darren, just with that brief introduction, hey, welcome to the Not Just a Transaction podcast.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. I'm looking forward to talking with you today. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, as you can hear, Darren, me and my brother-in-law, the co-host, we like to have fun here. It's just going to be fun. It's going to be light. So if an accidental swear gets dropped, I know you're out in the Midwest. So if an accidental swear gets dropped, we don't care. We're here in New England. Or if you like to tell jokes and things like that, we like to have fun. We'll keep it light here today. Light and informative. That's what we want to do.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
I love it. On this podcast, especially when we bring on guests, we really want to find out 3 major things. We want to know who you are, what you do, and why you give a shit, or why do you care? Because it is not just a transaction to us. So we're going to assume it's the same for you. So if you could, Darren, maybe just take us behind the green curtain a little bit and maybe tell us some background about yourself and then how you got involved in this real estate space.
Yeah, so I'll try to give you the push cart version because it could be a 4-hour story. I'm not going to put your listeners and your viewers through that. So I'm a guy that got a degree in criminology in college. So I thought I was going to be one of those guys you see on CSI TV shows. That's pretty much what I thought I was going to be. And I got a college degree, criminology. I'm out now trying to find a job. Well, the only job I could really find at the time, now this was in the early 1990s, so let's go back a ways, was a prison guard. All right, so I thought it gets me started, gets me going in that field, and so, hey, I'm going for it. So jumped in and started working as a prison guard for about 2.5 years in a prison here in Iowa, okay? So I got 100 stories about that, but instead of telling you those stories, what I will say is probably not a surprise maybe to you and maybe to your viewers and listeners. After about 2 years, I thought, I don't know if I really want to do this for the rest of my life. I don't know if I want to do this for another 5 years, 10 years. I figured out it wasn't what I wanted to do. And so one of the things I thought I wanted to do was real estate. And so I picked up a book in the warden's office one day. This book, the title of it is Think and Grow Rich. I'm sure a lot of your viewers and listeners are familiar with that book. So I took the book, took it home, read the book, and after reading the book, made a decision, I think it's time to make this real estate thing a reality. I didn't know anything about real estate. No, I had no background in real estate. I didn't study any real estate, nothing about finance, nothing at all, but decided to quit my job at the prison and jump into the real estate business. Now, what do I mean by jump into the real estate business? What I mean is I thought the smart thing to do was to get my license, a real estate license. Okay. So I did that, got my real estate license and started to focus on being a broker of apartment communities in the eastern half of the state of Iowa. All right. Now, I didn't have any forethought. There was no strategy behind it. I just was lucky and guessed that that would be something that might be a good idea, especially from a competitive end, you know, because there's lots of real estate agents out there. Okay. Well, for about 15 years, the good news is I made that into a really, really good business. And so for a 15-year period, I became the go-to guy for those people wanting to buy and sell apartment communities. Okay. So I went from prison guard to sales guy selling apartment communities. But you're going to notice I didn't say anything about owning anything. Okay. So for 15 years, I pretty much just sold apartment communities. It took me that long to figure out, you know, seeing the results of all of the people you work with, you probably may want to own some of this stuff too. So it was about 16, 17 years ago where I made the conscious choice of now starting to own the real estate, own the multifamily properties too. Okay, so you fast forward from that point to today, you know, I have ownership in a little bit over $50 million of apartments now. Most of those are held in partnership with other people. I've put together roughly 30 partnerships, actually about 40 partnerships over the years, raised a bunch of capital to do those things, hundreds of millions of dollars actually. So at the end of the day, I went from prison guard to sales guy to owner, and now owning, you know, a little bit over 1,100 apartment units here in Eastern Iowa now.
Yeah, a lot to unpack here. Great story, obviously. I mean, if that doesn't give any of the listeners hope, whether it's the first real estate, you know, piece of property that you're trying to sell to an investor or on your own, or if you're just trying to buy your first home like myself, I had to utilize a lease option or a rent-to-own program in order for me to buy my first piece of property. So, and then of course the story transitions from there. So I want to say a lot of my college roommates ended up being prison guards, which was interesting because they're all in criminal justice. So I'm sure that was a tough job, and I'm glad that you're able to make it out of there. Out of curiosity, what part of Think and Grow Rich, because I've read that quite a few times, what part of Think and Grow Rich like really struck home to say, hey, this is time?
Man, that's a great question. I could probably refer to a couple of things, but I guess the main one would be there's a chapter in the book that really isn't talked about very much, but it's probably, in my opinion, probably the most important one. And it's about accurate thinking. Okay. And so I pretty much came to the conclusion that working in the prison wasn't something I wanted to do for another 30 years, much less another 5 years. And it wasn't like it was that bad, but yeah. I just knew it wasn't something I was going to do. And I could have been like millions of other people and just grinded it out, stayed in there because it was something I knew, it was comfortable, it was a steady paycheck. I was married and had one child at the time. So man, there's a lot of reasons not to quit that job, man. A lot of reasons not to, benefits, health insurance, life, and I mean, all of that. Okay. But accurately, I knew I couldn't continue to do this and really enjoy what I was doing. And so the accurate part of that book really got me to realize, look, you may as well take a shot at this, fail miserably if that happens. Hopefully it doesn't. Fail miserably, and at least know in your mind you gave it a fucking shot, okay? Rather than going through this and living a 30 to 40 year life, doing what I don't want to do and thinking back, I wonder what would have happened if I did that. So it's really that accurate thinking chapter, I think, probably made most of the difference.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because I think it's just goes for anybody in any walk of life to say, all right, well, let's if if you're in a position where you don't see yourself being in that position forever, that's not your dream, it's not your vision, it's not your purpose, well, then getting outside your comfort zone and to make that happen in worst case scenario, right? Worst case scenario, you could have went back and been a prison guard again if you failed miserably.
Right.
Real estate. It was like when I made my jump from bartender. Worst case scenario, I could have went back and became a bartender again. So that goes for anybody out there. Step outside your comfort zone and make that next leap, whether it's to buy your first home or whatever that may be. Make your first leap there. You then decide to dive into multifamilies. So why that path?
Well, so I could make up a story and tell you how smart I was and how much of a genius I was to think about that. So when I got my real estate license, I wanted to try to be as competitive as I could be and stand out from everybody else. And so I found out by doing some research, there really wasn't anybody in my market or really in the eastern half of Iowa specifically focusing on multifamily. There really wasn't anybody. So I thought, what better way to stand out than to be the multifamily specialist, the apartment property go-to guy. So that's the direction I started, hoping that would work. And fortunately it did work. It did work. Now, that's not to say the first few years weren't lean years. They were lean. They were really lean years. Okay. But focusing on that turned out to be the right decision, because that really indoctrinated me not only into knowing the owners, not only into figuring out and knowing what they know, but now I really started to be good at analyzing, understanding, and really internalizing multifamily in a way that not a lot of other people could, just because I just immersed myself in it. So at the end of the day, man, I'd like to say, oh, it's because of some, genius forethought. No, I just thought that'd be the way to go. It turned out to be the right decision, man.
Yeah, isn't real estate, sometimes we just fall into it in a way. My family is in real estate, in creative real estate. And this is why this podcast has been created, one of the podcasts that we have. And we fall into it. I just needed a better way other than being a bartender. So here you go. You fall right into it. And that's my genius way of being in this type of real estate.
Well, and frankly, sometimes we got to listen to our internal voice too. And, so when your intuition is kind of telling you, yeah, you should go this direction, even though, it might not really logically be something you should do. Yeah, I think that's kind of part of it too. And again, like I said, man, it worked out, and I'm glad I did it that way.
No, I know it. It's been it's important that you made that leap, and that's why you're where you are today. You then transitioned from kind of having a job, right? My father-in-law was a broker owner for years, and you transfer from having a job to now ownership. What made you make that decision? And was there any stories behind that?
Yeah. So number one would admittedly be money and wealth. Okay. So what I discovered in working with just hundreds of multifamily owners over those years is that there's a difference between income and wealth. So as a real estate broker, you're obviously paid real estate commissions. And if you sell a shit ton of real estate, you're going to have a nice income. Well, a nice income, a large income is nice, but that really wasn't a path to wealth. That was a path to a nice income. That was good, like I said. But what I started to internalize and really discover when working with these guys is the guys that were wealthy, the guys that had substantial net worth, the guys that were really making a difference financially, not only in their own world, but whether it was a charity, whether it was being able to expand and do things they really wanted to do. The wealth was in the ownership of the real estate. That's where the wealth was made. That's what I discovered. The income side of it was great, like I said, but once I discovered the wealth is really in owning, not just selling this stuff, but in owning, that's when it really started to click for me. Unfortunately, it took me about 15 years to figure that out. But once I figured it out and it clicked, that's really where I decided to focus and double down.
That's awesome. And you said that you own about $50 million worth of real estate with these partners. Is there anything that differentiates your pieces of real estate from somebody else owning, say a multifamily down the street?
No, not really. Not at all.
Okay. So I'm just curious if there was like a certain way that you ran your properties. I'm looking through the lens too of a real estate investor, but I'm also looking through the lens of a potential renter or somebody that hears this podcast and says, hey, I heard this guy Darin. He seems to know what the heck he's doing. I want to live in a great multifamily where my family feels safe, anything like that. So I'm just curious if there's anything that separates maybe your multis from somebody else, and if it's not, that's okay too.
Well, so I would say from like a bricks and mortar and building style and type, there's probably not much differentiation in terms of the communities that we own compared to others. Sure, we could talk about maybe we have a little bit better location, maybe our units are a little bigger. So we could talk about those things. But I think what you're really asking is has to do with what I've really tried to work on with our team and with our properties and with the kind of properties we buy. It's about making an impact and making an impact on the residents that live there, so that it's not for example, it's not a landlord tenant kind of, because that kind of tends to be, that kind of relationship. Yep. There's a lot of conflict that's there. The media today doesn't help that out at all. And some other things. But for me, with the apartments, with the communities we own, I want to make a good impact on our residents. I want the residents to want to live there, enjoy living there, want to live there for as long as possible, because, hey, they like living there. They like dealing with our managers. They like dealing with our maintenance techs, for goodness sake. They like what we're doing for them in those communities, and they really want to live there. And it's all about the kind of relationship we build with them. And look, not like we know everybody personally. Of course we don't. But it's, again, kind of going back to impact and the culture that we've got with the communities that we buy, where they're at, what we think we can do, how we think we can own and manage for impact. That's really the kind of thing that we're looking for.
Yeah, I love that. So you're saying you don't run your multifamilies like a warden?
No. Don't do that. Don't do that. And the funny thing is, the other thing, and your viewers and listeners are going to know this intuitively, but I'm just going to emphasize it. The media really loves to pit the landlord and the tenant against each other. They really, really do. In terms of legislation that's trying to be done and has been done in some places, in terms of the reporting. And I'm not necessarily picking on the media. That's not my point. But my point basically is just make sure you don't fall into that same thing as an owner and landlord and really have that kind of attitude with your residents, because that'll be the attitude that actually will take money out of your pocket versus putting money in your pocket.
Yeah, I agree. There's a symbiotic relationship between somebody who owns a piece of real estate and then the person that gets to live in there, because that's the whole world. We're creating a space, as being an investor, a space for somebody to live, grow their family, and in return, you get a piece of that investment, or you get some cash flow on it, which is awesome. You use the word impact, and as we're shifting now into the final question, the final phase here, which is like, why do you care? You mentioned the word impact a couple of times. Why is that important to you in your team and your culture as you're growing out this portfolio?
Well, I mean, there's really a number of reasons why it's important. The first one is that in terms of what Darren wants to do, so I'm going to give you the selfish Darren answer first, okay? So in terms of what I want to do is I found that I am better off financially, I'm better off mentally, and I'm better off physically the more that I give of myself in terms of knowledge, information, and also in terms of what we can provide to residents and employees. At the end of the day, it sounds counterintuitive that just kind of keep on giving and keep on giving, because a lot of us, we're sitting back waiting to get something, right? So we're waiting. What are we going to get? What am I going to get from this podcast? What am I going to get from this? What am I going to get from that? And you want to have that attitude, of course, because it helps us. It helps us make progress. But by giving and then getting the results of, like I said, financial, mental, physical, you are just much better off doing that than always looking to take. Okay. So if I wrap that up in a ball, that's wrapped in impact. So it's really about the impact that we're making. So, I mean, I'm not going to bullshit you. Do we get along with all of our residents 100% of the time? No. Do my employees and I always see eye to eye on stuff? No. I mean, we still have challenges and speed bumps that we encounter. But what I found is by continuing to give more information, continuing to give more to employees, give more residents, and I'm not talking necessarily financial. I'm not talking about money necessarily. I'm talking about care. I'm talking about time. I'm talking about attention. I'm talking about leadership. So I'm talking about those kinds of things. The more that you give of that, you get a shit ton of it back. And it kind of sounds counterintuitive because, again, we're waiting to receive, but that's what it's really about for me. And a part of that also has to do with the older you get, the wiser you get, and the more you understand that. Now, if you would have asked me that question 20 years ago, I'd say, I don't know what the hell are you talking about? I got shit to do. I got stuff to sell, I got properties to buy, that would have been my answer. But knowing what I know now, that's my answer. And that's what really, I think, makes an impact, not only on me personally, but on all of those, those folks that are around me too.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. A great business owner treats his team and his employees a certain way. And if he continues to feed into them and pour into them, and they live a really good lifestyle, then it's only going to affect the tenants, in your case, in our case, the tenant buyers. Their lives are going to be impacted even better because they're going to be taken care of. I couldn't agree more. As we kind of wrap this up too, I know you speak a lot about physical and mental health. So, and in this time of the world that we happen to live in, so if you're listening to it, and this is we're recording this here at the end of December, going into January, in the midst of COVID pandemic, the importance of mental and physical health, like, why is that important? Why is that something that you're passionate about?
Well, the main reason I'm passionate about it is I want to, probably a lot like you and your viewers and listeners, I want to show up every day the best version of myself that I possibly can. That's like my mission. So every day I want to be the best version I can possibly be. And what the mistake I made for many years was I thought in order to be the best version of me, I just had to make a shit ton of money. Okay. And everything else will take care of itself. So the more income I make, everything else will take care of itself. That'll solve all my problems. The more real estate I own, that'll take care of itself. That'll solve all my problems. Well, what I discovered is that doesn't solve all of the problems. That's not the all answer to everything. What I found out was to be the best version of myself not only contains that business part of it, okay, but also contains the mental part of it, the physical part of it. So the more I'm in tune mentally, the more I'm in shape physically, and the more I can combine all of those things together, what I found out, man, was now I'm showing up as the best version of myself. And I see it in the way that I deal with people. I see it in the way that I feel. I see it in the way that the relationships I have, not only with my wife, with my kids, with my employees, all of those things make a difference. And so to me, showing up as the best version of myself contains all of those things together, the business side of it, the mental side of it, the physical side of it. And when you start really kicking ass in all of those areas at once, and not just depending on business, not just depending on income from the business, you go from being really pretty good to just being fucking excellent in terms of how you feel and how you deal with people.
I love it. That's a great explanation point on this today's conversation. So at the end, I always want to make sure that if somebody wants to contact you, or if you have something that you're promoting, that I want to make sure that you have a chance to go ahead and do that. So where can people reach you, or what's the best place for them to go check it out?
Yeah, so the best place to get more information on not only multifamily stuff, multifamily resources, and just general information, especially if your folks are looking into this for the first time, or even if they've got some experience, just go to my website. It's DarinGarman.com, and I'll spell that because a lot of people, unfortunately, I'm not the GPS guy. Okay, so it's www.DarinGarman.com, and it's spelled DarinGarman.com, DarinGarman.com.
Yeah, we'll make sure we go ahead and throw it in the show notes as well. Darren, it's been an absolute pleasure spending the last 20, 30 minutes with us here. I'm sure all of the listeners will appreciate just as much as I did. So thanks again for stopping by, my man.
Awesome, man. It was great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Not Just a Transaction. If you want to learn more on selling a home, buying a home, or resources to learn more, head on over to our website at originalre.com.